Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Alongside me tonight, I have Professor Pixel, my partner in crime. Dale to his Cooper or something. I'm not sure what to say about that, Pixel, because we're halfway through season 3 now of Twin Peaks, season 3, episode 9. And I gotta say, interesting episode. I think there's some humor in it, which we haven't had a lot of too. But then there's some dark stuff in here too. So it's a very mixed bag of an episode. What's your initial impression on here so far?
Well, out of most of the things that we've gone through, I do have to agree. They have certainly attempts at humor back in Twin Peaks. I'm really kind of this feels almost like a bridge. I think we're getting to a point, but I think the best way to just talk about it is to go through it. So
as you always say, sir, lead us in. Wait, let me ask you. Did you slow down this week and actually watch the opening credits to see if you could see Laura Palmer in the clouds?
I always see Laura Palmer in the clouds.
Okay, because I'm just saying,
she's always there for me. But in this episode, we start off with Doppeldale. While he was shot last week, he's fine now. And he's walking down a dirt road covered in blood. He grabs a bandana that's like hanging on a pole and uses it to wipe around him as he's glancing around, but moves on
forward. Gang sign.
I'm
sorry, I'm feeling rude today, but please continue.
No, you're not feeling.
I'm in a rude mood, as Stevie Ray Vaughan would say. Yeah.
But from there, we quickly cut to a plane. Tammy arrives, and a colonel is on the phone, and Gary picks it. Not Gary. Gary, what?
Cole.
Yes, Cole. He goes ahead and he picks it up, and Buckhorn is brought up, and it seems that they're going to take a slight detour. It cuts quickly back to Bloody Dale, as we'll call him now. And there's someone there waiting for him. Someone we've seen before. Doppeldale asks him for a couple phones, and that's when he gives a nod and he turns and says, Chantal, come out here. And we see Chantal, who we saw more than a few episodes ago, where this time she is not ready to receive Doppeldale as she was before. But she looks and says he's lucky because of the shots that got him. And she goes to grab a quick medical kit. Quickly cutting back in between this and Gordon Cole. I remembered his name. And he asks Diane if it's okay if they stop at Buckhorn. She isn't happy about it, but it involves the Blue Rose case. And so we see Gordon go to the pilot to tell them about the detour. Albert looks at Diane and he says, I know. Screw you, Albert. That's the age-appropriate way of saying it. And turns it around. Tammy then gets another call, moves towards Cole. Warden Murphy is calling. Cooper flew the coop because Doppeldale has escaped.
That was a good line. Really good line.
I could see it coming.
You saw the setup, exactly. You know it was going to be a little wampa going on. Yeah, my take up to this point, when I say it's a mixed bag, one of the things I mean about this episode is the editing. It's going back and forth between these two, and I wondered if that was the right choice. But when I say by that is, I mean, it just seemed like each scene would have, if you'd combined them into a bit of a longer one without going back and forth, might have had a little bit more weight behind it. Not that I didn't mind it, but when you have Gordon Cole kind of being in a serious moment, having to turn a plane around, and they're debating about what's happening here in South Dakota, and then he says, Cooper flew the coop. That was funny, but it takes away from the fact that Doppeldale, a bloody mess, is meeting at least one person we know, and Chantal. But Hutch is the name of the other guy, and he's played by Tim Roth, who was in a TV show years ago called Lie to Me, which had such great promise, but really got TV-fied, and I swore off TV ever since. It's one of those things where it's like, oh my God, Tim Roth, great actor, nice little, he'll add a lot of weight to these side characters. And like I said before, Lynch has done a great job with all this, but here it's like, I gotta say this about Doppeldale. I didn't know how long he would last, but like I said, it seems like he's going to be that way to the end. But they did a good job of making him look kind of like tough, like a badass, almost believable. Just his demeanor and all. And I got to give Kyle a lot of credit for acting that way too. But obviously, these are people that he knows. I thought another part of humor with all this was how when he gets the flip phone, it's a pink phone, and he's sitting there, and it's one of those like Oyster ones from like 2006 or whatever it is, and he's just typing away on it, and he's typing something here that it's something we'll talk about a little bit later in the episode, because we also see on the plane too that I don't know if it's because it's an FBI plane that the cell phones are blocked, because if you notice, Tammy's got the sat phone going.
Yeah.
But obviously, Doppledale had risen from the grave from last episode that we talked about, and he's got a plan. So we've said before that he's locked and loaded. He knows what's up. He's got his stuff rocking. He's good. He's good to go. And it all seems like we're converging. And 9 episodes in, I thought to myself, okay, we're not going to have any more new characters. And then we see Tim Roth, and I'm like, okay, I guess he's going to be a side character. I don't know, but when you have Tim Roth, you don't have him in there for 1 episode. Is my take. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. But for me, it's hard to say, but I just felt like there are certain tones about it, like, oh my God, we're actually going to get to the root of, Agent Cooper, and not what you and I have been watching for 9 episodes now, Doppledale and Dougie Dale, goofy and serious. The real Dale Cooper that we know from season 1, 2, and the movie, that we see on Gordon Cole's face. I've been liking his seriousness and his tone, and that's been giving a lot of weight behind what we've been feeling. And we'll continue, because I guess at this point here, to me, I felt this is kind of almost the end of the scene here, because it gives a little bit kind of goofy. He tells this guy, hey, get rid of the phone. I want you to do this. And he tells Chantal, what's that?
Kill the phone.
Yeah, kill the phone. So he shoots it. So we know that the guy's a shooter. Okay, we get it. But the text message he sends is, around the dinner table, the conversation is lively. Okay, it's a code for something, whatever. But we see him calling somebody, and this is the somebody that we had talked about before that we didn't see too much, who, because we hadn't, and it was a side character, unless you're really hardcore watching this or binging it, it's almost hard to kind of keep up with it. And it's the guy that gave the young kid a lot of money and a lot in a room somewhere. And the kid said, well, hey, you're doing whatever. And he says to the young kid, you don't want to get messed up with these people. And his name's Duncan Todd. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff that I'm going, okay, I thought they were actually, like, to your point, even though you said bridge episode, I was thinking we've got all the characters introduced. Now they're all starting to butt heads. Now we're going to get some loose ends tied up, and then we're going to get to see the fallout of it. But, after watching the episode, I don't feel that way. But right now I did, because I'm like, oh, okay, this all makes sense here too, how it seems like he knows who Duncan is and everything else. So I don't know. I'm not saying it's a bad episode, but as a bridge episode, I guess it has to be in there. But I didn't have a lot of fun with it because of the way they did some of these things here. So when we see basically Doppledale take off, you get the sense that, he knows where he's going. And then we think about everybody meeting in Buckhorn, it's going to get good. But before that, we're in Las Vegas, the police department there.
Viva Las Vegas.
That's right. This was a fun scene. I thought it was actually very good. And I thought, okay, maybe they just did the editing thing, and then the rest of it's going to play out. And I was wrong. So again, hit or miss. You see Doppledale and Janie East sitting outside.
Dougie Dale.
Yes, Dougie Dale. Excuse me. And they're in there with their boss, and the boss is in the room talking to the FBI agents, who, as I always call it, is Champ Kind, because I cannot unsee him as Champ Kind from Ron Burgundy. Whammy. I can't unsee him and all that. But what's interesting here is we've talked about how when we see things happen, like with Dougie Dale, it's really how the rest of the world interacts with them that we kind of respond to, where it's almost believable, even though they're not in on the joke and we are. Because his boss is sitting there talking to Fusco, and he's like, well, he's a little slow, but he's really methodical. He's really whatever. And he's really furious. But there was, I thought, a fantastic couple of, there's one fantastic scene there and a few really good parts in here that really jumped out to me that I went, you know what? This is the kind of little things that I really like that they put in here, that even though there's a plot and there's characters, the acting part of it that I would like. So, Dougie Dale's boss, Bushnell Mullins, we had talked about before, and you made the comment in his office when Bushnell was talking to Dougie, and he was looking at all the names on there, that behind him was this big poster of somebody who looks like he was a fighter and had his things up, and that was actually him as a younger youth. And you're like, oh, that makes sense. So in this scene here, he goes through and he's talking to the FBI, and the FBI guys, they come across as like the Three Stooges to me. I mean, they're all kind of dopey looking. They're all being very serious, not smiling. And the boss, who's acting like a good guy, which we don't normally get as bosses, that throws me off too here, the head of an insurance firm and all that. But he's a solid, down to earth guy. But he's just like, hey guys, you know, it's just really weird. First, Dougie's car is blowing up. Somebody tried to kill him. Blah blah blah. And it almost seems like the FBI is taking him seriously, but we find out they're really not, because they're all just standing on. They're like, well, we'll get back to you. And he's just standing there, and they shoot the shot from behind him where he's got his right hand and he's just got it clenched in fist, like he wants to swing out at the FBI agents for being such dullards. I thought that was a fantastic little bit of acting, and it felt like that was going to be the end of the scene. But it actually continued when he got frustrated, he left, said, Dougie, take the day off. Jane's like, okay, I'm going to take him to the doctor. But then the FBI agents, again, this dove deep, and it allowed us to kind of build on some good acting. And this is what I really was hoping would happen in this episode, because the FBI agents realized, oh my gosh, we have no information on him from like pre-1997, no tax records, birth certificates, that sort of stuff. And they're like, well, is he under FBI protection or not, or what? And I thought, this is pretty good that they go from kind of listening to the insurance guy, but not really giving a rat's ass, to going, hey, what the hell's going on? No one's going to put one in on this. And then Champ Kine, the lead Fusco brother, he's like, okay, I got an idea. And this I kind of popped for. He goes and gets Dougie Dale a cup of coffee, a fresh one, which he sucks on like a baby. And he takes the coffee cup to do the old, well, let's get his prints and, you know, DNA kind of trick that we've seen 50 million times. That being said, it was still done well, because it's a way of bringing coffee into every other couple of episodes and emphasizing it without it, you know, being, it's like a variation on a theme of the coffee that we got to know and love from early on in season 1 and season 2. I thought it was really good. But of course, they all get told that there's an incident that are going to have to do. It has to do with Spike, who seems to be our vertically challenged individual. And
Ike
these
the
cops,
Spike.
Ike the Spike, yeah. And so these guys get a hard on, and they want in on the action, so they go to leave. So let me stop there and hand the baton over to you.
Yes, I actually really did enjoy this scene too, because it actually showed them using their brains for once. But at that point, once they're getting ready to go and handle Ike the Spike, we zoom in on Dougie as he's staring.
Yep.
And what does
What's he
he
staring
see?
at?
But the American flag, and in the background, America the Beautiful begins to play.
Tell me you didn't pop for that. That was pretty good.
Little bit.
Because it's like what's going to be the thing that breaks them out? That's what we want to know. Is it the American flag? Oh my God, that'd be incredible.
But his attention is grabbed as this blonde woman walks by. She has these
incredible,
kind of
gorgeous woman. Oh my God,
got nice legs and pink shoes, and he follows until he sees an outlet, and then he's staring at that before we cut. We see the three.
Music's changed there too. Did you catch that? From America Beautiful to that dark stuff we've been hearing whenever their electricity is involved.
Yeah. Well, I didn't think they'd keep playing America Beautiful whenever he was looking at the outlet, and they did not. But we see the three and they pass by. They mentioned something about an expensive taillight before, and they actually stopped by a car and pointed out.
That's kind of funny though too.
Then they go ahead and move on. We cut to the little assassin, Ike the Spike. He calls and says no cigar and that he's taking a medical leave before he hangs up. Cops get around the hotel as the little man takes a drink. He's heading down the hall with his bag, and then he's surrounded and not happy about it. As one of the officers is saying, "Oh, Ike, no, we've got you. We got your entire palm, in fact," because there was part of flesh on the ground, and they literally peeled the palm off the sidewalk. But I am glad to quickly cut back to trees and in Twin Peaks at the sheriff's department.
Yes.
Lucy is looking for furniture on her computer.
This is a great scene. Yeah. Go ahead.
She stands up and walks over to Andy and she says, "I love the beige chair." And then she goes back, sits down. Andy stands up, walks over and says, "Well, I really love the red chair." Goes back. And after a few moments, Lucy gets up and walks over and says, "But I really love the beige chair." So once more, Andy gets up and moves over as she's sitting there and says, "Oh, I'm sorry, Pookie. If you want to get the beige chair, you can." And then he goes back. She smiles, but it looks like she gets the red one.
She did.
So
he loves me. It's a test of the relationship because that's what she's doing. Like she did before with the whole stupid kid angle. Don't get me hot revisiting that. But this is classic, Andy and Lucy, isn't it? It works.
Yeah, I guess it works.
Well, if they're not going to be involved in like something deep or dark, and we can't picture really Lucy being involved, we did see enough of them early on. So this is just something in the middle few episodes I feel like to tide us over because we know they're not major characters, but it wouldn't be Twin Peaks without them. But this totally sums up their entire relationship. So for that, I thought this was a lighthearted scene. It was a little bit of comedy. His hairstyle is just it's like the ultimate comb over in that, not that you can respect it because it's a bad comb over, but because he's got the front part so fluffed up. It kills me. But here's the thing. It also reminded me of, I don't even know if it was last episode or the episode before. Remember where he was supposed to meet somebody that was supposed to give him information on the side of the road, and that guy ended up being a no-show. And that was like, oh my gosh, is Andy going to get involved in a dark part of what's going on here in Twin Peaks? So when you introduce a character or reintroduce them again after something dark like that with something light like that, it kind of made me think of the dark stuff, even though this is a cute scene. So it's kind of, again, one of those things where I could say this just goes back and forth, because in the scene before this, when Ike gets captured, isn't it anticlimactic? You're like, really? That's it? Like, I wasn't expecting him to go postal necessarily, or there'd be a big bloody shootout or anything like that. It doesn't have to be that way, but it leads me to believe that Ike might still have more screen time left with him rather than these guys capture him. It's just the next step in the plot line, which I'm fine with. Because the quick scene after this, because again, these are real quick now, I'm like, I had to rewind it and listen to it again and then put the subtitles on because I couldn't quite hear it. And you hear like a kid running around through this home, and you hear this woman going, "Johnny, what are you doing? Why are you out of your room? Stop." And it took me a while until I saw it and realized, oh, this is Johnny, Audrey's brother that she had pushed down the stairs or whatever, that she'd felt guilty about. The kid with the well, he was younger then, that wore the Indian headdress in one of the first episodes of the first season of Twin Peaks, where you and I had talked about, we didn't see him all that much, and you had forgotten about him or didn't know who he was. And then at the end of season 1, I think it was, we were talking about that and how he showed up briefly in season 2. So I'm like, why are they introducing him now? Okay, Tim Roth, I get he's a heavy. He always plays a heavy, even though Tim Roth overacts a little bit. That's great. He's got a lot of charisma. Why are we introducing this guy here? The scene that makes it interesting is when Sylvia, I guess his mom, runs up, which I guess that'd be Audrey's mom. He's got a bloody face, like he fell and hit himself against the wall. He's not conscious, but of course there's an obvious picture of some waterfalls there, which means, okay, that looks like Twin Peaks, or at least a part of there, maybe by the Great Northern Lodge, I guess, somewhere around there. And it made me think, okay, now are we going to see Audrey if we see her? Because, like I said, we're halfway through. Usually by now, most of these most new characters are recurring ones for the most part pop up. But again, Lynch style, he'll give like an extended minute or two to Andy and Lucy over a goofy chair scene, but it works. And here, I don't know, it threw me off. I kind of wasn't prepared for it. How did you feel about getting to see him again?
I was confused as to why this matters. You hear a male voice, though, and I think that is supposed to be Ben. Why'd you let him out?
Well, it was, yeah, and it was hard because I couldn't hear it. But the other thing I noticed too when I rewatched it is that, and that's a good point. I didn't even think of Ben for some reason because I picture Ben in his office, getting ready to make sweet, sweet love to a very beautiful woman, which we'll talk about in a moment. But if you noticed when we see the shot of where he's at in the house, it's a picture, basically it's a static shot of a giant stairwell, but we see him running upstairs, but then downstairs, and we see him just briefly going through a hallway. You do see a flash of light, which when they cut to it, again, we've talked a little bit about electricity in here a little bit. His head looks like it hit the wall, or like he may have ran into a light, but they didn't show the light. So I don't know that it's really related to electronics, but they definitely show a hole in the wall with blood coming down to where he lands. So I just don't know if electricity has anything to do with it, if we're supposed to. It just feels, it's obviously something we're going to be exploring, which again, I wasn't prepared for, but it's there. It's there.
Yeah, no, I agree. Not exactly sure what it's supposed to mean.
Yeah, you want to go
Maybe
ahead and
we're
take the
just
next
trying,
scene?
but yeah, I'm ready to take the next scene.
Oh, okay.
And
Sorry about that. I
we
cut you off.
see, no. I'm really excited to talk about it because it's Bobby.
Yes, this is a great scene too. Go ahead.
He arrives home with some of the guys, and he sees his mother there, and we see Hawk and new Truman walking in, and they're there to talk about Agent Cooper's last visit before Briggs died. She says, as soon as Coop left, that Garland said that one day Bobby, Hawk, and Sheriff Truman, even though she didn't know it would be this Sheriff Truman, would come and ask about Agent Cooper. And when they come, be sure to give them this. And now they're here. She asks quickly if they'd like coffee. They say no. And she nods and leads them over to a chair. And she says, look at this chair. And she reaches down and she pushes some kind of lever. And out of it comes this cylinder, this little silver cylinder. And she says basically how she didn't know at that time, but his father knew that he'd become the man that he is right now. That you weren't ready for this yet, but you are a good man, Bobby. Father knew that. And then she gives the cylinder and then offers him some coffee, which they promptly accept. But from there, we go to another building. But not in Twin Peaks. We go to Buckhorn once again. And we see Lieutenant Knox and the detective from the first and second episode leading them through as Diane is left in the waiting room because she doesn't want to see a dead body at this moment. So she goes for a smoke, and she's told she can't smoke, but she screams, "It's a morgue!"
Effing morgue.
That is when she quickly gets a text talking about tabling a conversation, one we saw Doppeldale sending earlier.
Yes.
But in the actual scene itself that we're seeing, we see the detective, and he's explaining pretty much everything. It's an info dump, but they got to catch up Gordon Cole and Albert. So,
well, let's pause for a moment here because that's an important scene, and I wanted to talk a bit about Bobby's scene. I thought the whole scene with Bobby's mom was great. The actor that plays Bobby, obviously everybody's age, we know this, for the most part. There are newer and younger people in the show too. But Bobby, he's such a handsome gentleman. He's so good looking, and he's got these piercing eyes. he's just matured very well. And I thought the fact that he was being the or deputy there for Twin Peaks is really telling, because we know he was into running drugs when he was younger. He would literally was a bad boy, but might have had his own moral code for whatever that's worth. We've talked about that before. But when his mom's sitting there, the thing that stuck out to me was when you watch him, I always it's a Twin Peaks rule, and one of these days we may decide to write Twin Peaks rules. One of them is that whenever Bobby cries, it's going to be an awesome episode, because this is just phenomenal. The whole chair thing with Major Garland Briggs. Again, the actor's dead. How can we incorporate him in the storyline? But I love the character. The more I get some of this lore of Briggs, that's interesting in and of itself. Because remember, we went back to the 50s pretty recently, right?
Yep.
Here, Bobby's about to break down, but the positivity, and again, it's gonna sound cheesy here, and we know there's a cheese factor to Twin Peaks sometimes. The fact that we talked about how Bobby and his father, how they had a very strong father-son relationship, despite Bobby not necessarily being the best kid, and Garland Briggs having faith in him, I think is just outstanding. It's amazing how the show can pivot on the dime, like in the scene here about how great it is. Because it's not a social call. They're there to talk business. And Bobby just, he's like overwhelmed or whatever. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, we're going to have to come back to this, because this scene to me should have continued. It would have allowed us to get more emotionally involved into it. But to your point, that they cut away, and I'm like, damn it, especially when I see the next scene. Because the thing that was striking to me is not that we're having the convergence between, what was it, the Pentagon and now the FBI. They're working their own angles on this case, and now they're converging on what's going on. So we know that in their own way, whether they're helping each other or not inadvertently or against each other, they're getting closer to everything. So the sense of building towards this explosion, if you will, gets derailed when certain things happen, like cutting off certain scenes. And then here, when she's like, it's an effing Morgan, calls them a bunch of effing pansies or whatever, I'm like, well, I get it. And Diane's supposed to be kind of bitchy, I guess, which is not how we took it. So they went against maybe the perceived type of what we got used to with Dale talking into the cassettes. But her getting that text made me not want to watch the next scene. It made me want to say that should have been a transition scene to something else. You know what I mean? Because again, mentioned it before, comedy in this episode. When I saw that, I went, oh Christ, Diane's now working for the dark side, or maybe she had been all along. I don't know, but it's apparent that she knows Dale and is involved somehow. And to me, that doesn't look good. And then yes, you get the data dump, which again, if we had that first, then maybe we go back to the emotional thing with that as a reveal. I think would have been more effective. You get to see all of them get together, and this scene, unfortunately, is a comedy scene. I say unfortunately because I think it works really good. I forget the coroner's name, but I've said before she reminds me of Psych Woody, who's the coroner, and there is a real weirdo dude, and she's like the female version. I absolutely love it, and she even says a line there too, where Albert kind of like respects what she has to say, because when they have a sidebar, when Gordon and Albert do, they say, well, God, he's like 70, 72 now. This body's like a 40, 45-year-old. And they said, well, wait a minute. What about this and that? We have to act on this assumption. So it's like they're allowing themselves scientifically to believe in what the only plausible explanation so far is, that there's something weird going on. And it all has to do with the Blue Rose case, the Philip Jeffries thing from way back in the day that we've only briefly touched upon. But we've known that Garland Briggs has had some extracurricular supernatural type of things, but it hasn't been divulged. The other thing I wanted to point out here too is, as I slow down, because it is a lot, the chair wasn't just significant in that it was Garland Briggs's chair. It was the fact that I think was the chair that he sat in when there were certain emotional moments back in Twin Peaks. And the significance to somebody in my age, which is a lot older than you, being the young 20-something millennial, is you usually had your head of the table and nobody sat in that chair. You usually had your chair in the living room, which nobody would sit in. That was because you were the head of the household, and that position itself was respected. And so I thought it was really great that they did this little gimmicky thing, which come on, let's be honest, it came across as a little bit forced or easy, lazy writing. That can work, and which we'll talk about in a few moments. But the head of the chair, the head of the table, the head of the household, I love how Garland Briggs' stature is emphasized by him being the lead of the family, which, like I say, will get emphasized here in a moment. And the chair is the way to do it. That significance is gone in today's society. Nobody thinks of like the man as being the head of the household in a chair, and we don't sit in that. That's daddy's chair or whatever. I just think it was an incredible, nice thing. And for somebody my age compared to yours, it carries a lot of significance. Maybe it didn't for you. That's not a slight. That's just an observation. So like I say, some really good, powerful scenes here mixed in with some goofy ass stuff and weird editing.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
As I was saying, this info dump has some new information. We learned that while the wife was killed by a Doppelgänger, as we saw in the third, fourth episode, not exactly sure. We learn that they blame the lawyer and have him in custody.
Right.
And then we learn that Ruth and Principal Hastings were writing a blog together.
Yes.
About alternate dimensions. And
yes.
The last entry has to do with them being in the zone and meeting the Major. Albert takes Cole aside, says that they thought he died 25 years ago. And that body is about the age Briggs was 25 years ago. And after that, they go ahead and move back, and they're told about what was in Briggs' stomach, from Dougie to Janie E. And they want to speak to Hastings. There's a quick cut here to Jerry, and he hears a voice as he's looking down at his foot, and it says, "I am not your foot." Yeah, no, it's really weird. He tries to grab it.
On the ground with his foot. It's awful. I don't get it.
I don't get it either. But it could be that somehow, some way, that the Red Room is reaching out to Jerry. Out of all the people to do it to, but it's quick. We move on, and we see Chad. What an asshole! In the Twin Peaks Sheriff Department, eating. And he's told quickly by Truman, who enters the office, that you can't eat in here. And so he's like, "Oh, well, come on. I was just trying to do it." But he tells him to get out. And he picks up all his stuff, can't open the door, and asks for some help. And Hawk, even though he doesn't want to, opens the door and let him out. They shut it and quickly rush to the table. It's Rod.
Did you see the sandwich Lucy was eating when they walked in? That thing's at least a pound. It's about 6 inches tall. I'm not exaggerating. Go back and look at that. I'm going, that has to be like a rib, because I'm going, holy crap, that petite woman, this huge thing. Because when we see him in there eating in the conference room where he's not supposed to be, he's got the old stupid paper towel as a bib, and he's got 2 microwave dinners and a plate of some crap and all that. And they all look at him with disgust. It's funny, and they don't even want to open the door for him. They don't like this guy at all. I think it's great. This is what I like about when you do a show. You can have people talking, but then when you act and stuff like this, that's what makes it fun watching, because they take the moment to see him try to balance everything and all that. And you're right, Hawk's like, and we know Hawk to be a fairly decent guy, really. I mean, he's probably the most morally centered out of them, at least that we know. And he's like begrudgingly open the door. Really good scene.
Yeah, no. And but quickly they look at the rod, and they're trying to figure out at the table how to open it. There's no buttons. And then Truman looks over and says, "What are you grinning about?" Because we see Bobby grinning like a fool, knows how to open it. They need to go outside, though. So they go outside, and Bobby takes this rod and throws it down. And once he picks it up, he brings it over, and there's a hum that they all hear. So he goes ahead and throws it again, and it's open. There's a piece of paper inside. It says 253 yards from Jack Rabbit's palace, and there's strange instructions inside. And Bobby's like, he did it again, and knows this place. Apparently, when he was a kid, he and his father had this make-believe area, and he named it Jack Rabbit's palace. And Truman, too, says, because there's 2 dates listed, well, we'll go ahead on this first date, and we'll do what it says. And there's another piece of paper inside, though. It's very important. That it's a lot of slashes and ones and zeros, but in between that, there's a message. Cooper / Cooper. And Hawk looks at Truman and says, 2 Coopers. Oh, man, I got chills.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I mentioned before, and I immediately thought of this scene with about the editing and all that, because to me, I would have liked this to have been kind of like almost like a run on a little bit. There's no way Bobby would have waited till they got back to the thing to tell the guys what it is and try to open it. I mean, it's just it's a bit lazy to me. It's a bit stretching it a bit. It's even by TV standards, it's just I didn't care for it. Now I love the fact that, like I say, it enhanced everything we talked about before with Bobby and his father, because you're right, we saw that there was some weird codes and stuff earlier on a printout, didn't we? And now it looks like we see something similar here too. And now we have the whole thing with Hastings. And I'm like, yes, we could see Principal Hastings again, maybe, or at least we haven't forgotten about him, because I thought the short amount of screen time that he had did a phenomenal job with it. So I'm really going, yes, I love that. That's awesome. It's going to be great. So to me, this is interesting. Again, it's a little cheap. It's a little bit of an easy way to kind of advance the plot line, as it were. Um, that being said, I still like the acting in it. And again, Bobby's in here, and to hear him talk about himself being, like a little boy, it fills out his character in a plausible way, but it also makes his father look really, really good. So they both get the rub, as we would say, with it. That is something that I think is pretty interesting too. Really good scene too. It's one of the better ones, I think, in here. Just them discovering, and of course, it's coincident that in a day or two is the special days about meeting or whatever, which leads us to believe that maybe Doppledale's got something involved. Why don't you go ahead and take us through the next scene?
Well, cutting quickly past Gordon, Cole, Tammy, and Diane outside for a cigarette break. Poor Tammy's just sitting there as Cole is taking it and saying, "Whoa!" as apparently hasn't smoked in a while, and asking Diane if they remember the days. But we cut to the important stuff. Inside, we see Hastings freaking out. "I'm bleeding out here, man." But no, he's not bleeding out. Tammy goes in and introduces herself, asks about Hastings' writing, and he's saying how it's all real, all of it, all having to do with the alternate dimension. And he confirms that they met the Major, and he said that he was apparently hibernating there. That's how he put it in the zone, as they call it. And they asked him to get important numbers, coordinates. Ruth wrote the coordinates on her hand, so that way they would remember, but he does not remember them. He said that they brought the numbers back to the Major, and that's when somebody held him down and asked his wife's name. There's a photo, and he correctly identifies the Major, and she asks if he can tell her what happened once they gave the numbers. They all floated up, he said, and they saw the Major look at them and say, "Cooper, Cooper," before his head disappeared. Ruth then died there in the zone, as it were, in, well, Hastings' arms. But when he woke up, he was in his home. He is then asking why can't they help, that he was supposed to be going, they were supposed to be going on a trip to the Bahamas, and he's rambling on about it. But Albert looks at the others behind the other side of the mirror and asks if anyone wants fruitcake before we cut away.
Yeah, one thing I failed to mention about the Bobby scene earlier is that in the first or second episode here of season 3 of Twin Peaks, we saw, and you and I had discussed some of the shots that they put in that were early on that we go, is it something we're going to see in the future? And they're just giving us a snapshot of it now. And one of them was, it was an industrial looking scene of, looks like a tiny, small single stack factory, something, old or whatever. And I noticed when Bobby was throwing the rod to get it to open, that it's there right next to the parking lot of where they're at. So I don't know if that's significant or not. That's something I forgot to mention. And one of the things, with Twin Peaks is, like I said, when you go back and you watch it a second time, you can catch up on stuff. And that's what happened when I rewatched season one when we started reviewing it. And here on a new watch, first watch ever for season three, I feel like some of those little things that we've gotten to know to look for or maybe watch, I'm really looking for them a lot. So it's when I saw the scene here of them kind of talking, I said before how I really liked it a lot, but again, the editing's throwing me off because, yeah, I get it. Diane's probably, I'm going to say, being forced to work for Doppledale because we just automatically think of her being loyal to Cooper. We're going, really? Cooper didn't have, anybody on his side, even though Cooper stole what's his face's woman, and that was the whole setup for season two. And another thing, this show is filled with beautiful women, right? I mean, gorgeous women,
Yeah.
and even if they're older or maybe not as gorgeous as others, relatively based on your taste, they're still done it well, and they're very. Everybody has their own role to it, and so here, when she's out having a cigarette, and they all come out to watch. What is it? Tammy is their name,
Tammy.
the FBI. Yeah, Agent Preston. She comes out here, and I think this chick's modeled or done something because it's so uncomfortable watching a scene, even though she's a gorgeous woman, because she goes through all these model poses because she's supposed to be so uncomfortable being out there. And I love how Lynch will have a scene in there like that because you can see it, and a part of me makes me go, "It's like I thought there might have been some like innate jealousy between them, kind of sort. Not that Tammy knows Cooper, but it definitely seems like Gordon is old school because he'll put his hand on the small of her back, guiding it through. I'm going, well, I know Gordon loves the women. We've talked about that, how he really loved getting the kiss from Shelley, and we know that in here it almost seems like it's a sexual connection from the past because it was definitely extremely friendly about. Yeah, we used to smoke a good one together back in the day. Whether they're referencing not just cigarettes but pot or just spending time together. The whole point is I don't know that this is supposed to be a love triangle because it's not quite there, but this scene did not work for me at all. The smoking thing, it stood out. And again, it made me think of, you know what? I get she's supposed to be stressed out because of the message she got that appears from Doppledale. That should have been a oh shit moment rather than a oh really we're not going to get something with it. So it kind of annoyed me. And then watching this overacting by this extremely gorgeous exotic woman totally made me feel uncomfortable because I don't know that she's a great actress, but she's definitely a stunner and a looker. And I don't know, it's derailing some really awesome scenes, and I don't know. And then you throw in the whole mime foot thing here, and then the scene after that where they have Hastings. I feel like part of this was ad libbed because it just seems like he's just putting stuff together, and I have no problem with that. Sometimes you say, okay, this is what we want to accomplish, just hit these bullet points and go. And he does such a great job sobbing and snotting and everything else there too. This is why I really think Matthew Lillard is so great in this role, and I wanted more. It's just enough for us to go, damn it, he's good in here. And you almost feel sorry for him. That's how believable he is. Oh, I didn't kill him. And it's like, you know what? That's a story that probably I hope gets explored because somehow they figured out the whole secret, it seems like, of what Garland Briggs, which is involved in, which is really the whole secret of Twin Peaks, if you think about it, that we're assuming it is. And Garland Briggs was ahead of the game here, and we know that even though he's not around. That's freaking awesome. And that's the story I kind of wanted to lead into because, again, we know who killed Laura Palmer, but we never explored the supernatural. Now we're finally getting to it. I'm going, God, we haven't seen Hastings for several episodes. This was a great triumphant return, but it was bookended by just some weak sauce to me. I don't know, but I thought he did tremendous in here. And man, Lillard's just been an A+ homer and making the most of what screen time he's got. The little detail of circling the picture and signing it, I thought was good because obviously that's going to be used for something. I don't know if that's how it really goes, but to your point, it's like a second data dump, isn't it?
A little bit.
Well, we're going to go to the Bahamas, soak up the sun. I didn't kill her, I swear, I promise. But you know who this is going to get back to, right?
Who?
Mr. Gold Shovels.
But
But from there, we get. Oh, go ahead.
oh no, yeah. I mean that's fine if you want
No,
to.
The next scene, we get a picture at night, transition shot of the waterfalls, which I think is supposed to be what we saw with Johnny when he hit his head on the wall earlier. The
Beautiful.
Great Northern. We see Ben back in the room, and he's in there, and he's looking for the hum, and he's there with what's her name, who I escapes
Beverly.
me, Beverly, and Diane Lane or Ashley Judd. I just don't know. I tend towards Diane Lane because I've seen her more, but Ashley Judd, every time I see her, such a natural feminine beauty quality to her. I I just, you can't get better than this in here, and you know that there's been some soft flirting going on back and forth, and part of me goes, I know he's old and Ben is smart and he's been around, and we know he loves a good visit to the whorehouse as much as anybody, so he knows women. He knows Catherine Martell, and we've always said, or I have, that he does his best when he's got something to plot and scheme about, which he kind of has or hasn't, but it's the femme fatale thing that really gets him going. And he's older, but he's dressed well. He's thin. He's well put together. He's about as good as you can get for 60, 65, whatever his age is supposed to be in here, I think. Okay. Think he's a strong character, supposed to be a bad guy. I don't know, when we've talked about how he seemed to have had a come to Jesus moment when he got out of his catatonic state there with on all that nonsense, foolishness, absurdity, about him wanting to do the right thing at the end of season 2. If that's still believable, it seems that way. But we think with her, or at least I do, that with that visit back at home with her husband, because she's married, that she's intentionally hitting on this guy. And I think he knows it. And he's kind of going, I'll go along with it. But it's weird because it seems like it's been a pivot. Now he really just cares about finding the source of this hum, which they're looking for, and it gives them the convenient excuse to accidentally bump into each other and have a small physical, intimate moment where he then reveals, I can't do this. Which, again, from Ben Horn, not being able to do it. I'm not saying it's growth of character, but it goes against type based off who he is. And we see her as a femme fatale, not getting too pissy about it. But I'm going, you know what? I'm curious what the hell's going to happen here, because we saw Johnny there and Ben. Now we've got her, and God, she's so beautiful. I want to see her take her clothes off and get flirted with. It's all about the seduction thing. You can't say no to that, and he does, and it's
Because
amazing.
as she says, you're a good man.
Which I'm like, oh, when a woman says that to you, you get ready for wrath, because when you turn a woman down like that, the only way you can do it usually successfully is to play completely stupid and dumb, or whatever. Or because I just feel like Ben's going to get the wrath of this woman coming, and whereas Agent Preston is, the young, beautiful agent that's smart and resourceful and all that. This one is a woman that's got intelligence behind her that would be a really incredible mortal enemy, I think. And again, that's what's so tantalizing about Twin Peaks, is sometimes you get these side characters and performances that sometimes, I'm not going to say they overpower who they're acting with, because I don't ever feel that they do. But I've mentioned before about how I've loved Harold's little side character. It's kind of dopey, but there's these hints of these interesting stories that you go, man, if they did a spin-off of something, of just some of these side characters, and if the writing was strong, it could work, just because they're that good. And I'm not saying that about here, but my goodness, really, really good B and C level characters in this season here too. Because the only thing we have happen here, which I thought was weird, is we get the introduction of some nondescript DJ, somebody I don't know, who's got his synths and whatever, and he's playing some house music at the RRR. And then we get, I think, a woman that we haven't seen before,
Yep, one
who
blonde, one dark haired.
both completely skanky. They've got the teeth look like they're meth heads. She's got some ugly rash that they show on her armpit. She keeps scratching. They talk about how they can't do anything, but they mention how I'm serving burgers across the street. Don't know that that's the actual diner or not, because that's never, I think, been established to my knowing. So who the hell are these two? But it's like, damn it. Halfway through season 3, and you're introducing another set of minor characters in addition to the Tim Roth character, in addition to somebody halfway through. I'm like, is this really the good way to end? I don't know. It felt really off to me. And if that was the intention, it worked, because nothing happens here other than him talking. I was trying to go back and like look at some like lines that maybe they might have said, but oh, all I can think of is that it's been a while since the guy and the mystery guy flipping the thing that ran and hit over the kid, or hit the kid flipping the dime, if they're all related because of drugs. And it makes me think of Bobby. But other than that, I just was like, this was a weird way to end to me. It's probably the weakest of all the endings so far for me. How did you feel about this?
Yeah, no, it was random totally. It was felt pointless. And finally, when the band was shown and the credits played, I expected it, and it was the end.
Yeah. I mean, three beautiful women with some sort of emo pop sort of thing. They got 3 cents and that's it. I'm like, okay, well, it's nice, I guess. And I don't mind it, but a part
I
of me
mind
always
it.
goes, I know you do, but part of me always goes, would they have the final scene like after the rolling credits and some of these just to make you keep watching, as a rib. And a part of me goes, please have one once, but whatever. I don't know. So like I say, overall for me, my final thoughts, mixed bag of an episode, some really great scenes to it, some phenomenal ones that made me feel very emotional about Twin Peaks and all that, because it's about relationships and it's not about the plot, it's about the characters. And here it was very hit or miss. I was really pissed about the Diane thing. Um, I just felt very angry about it, but then I loved the whole Briggs thing with Bobby, and I think we want to see Chad get his ass beat and die. We want to see Bob eat Chad's face off. I mean, that's really what it is, right? I mean, and just he's good enough to be disgusting and annoying. Where if we want our annoying side characters, we get Lucy and Andy. So yeah, I don't know if it's a weak episode, but I think transition episode, what you said, a bridge one, I think is accurate to sum it up. Some good stuff in it, but it's good in that it's less Dale and more of the other characters. Some we haven't seen before. A plus goes to Bobby and also Principal Hastings, I think. What about you? What final thoughts do you have?
I'm just excited to see where we can go. We're halfway. We're halfway. This is the halfway point. Uh, and we're going to write it up all the way to episode 18 and finish it up.
Well, I think at the start of the next episode, we'll talk about where we're at. We'll do a bit of a kind of State of the Union about where we're at and what we think is going to happen, and then that way we can compare at the end, because I really don't know, other than it's got to come back to Twin Peaks, doesn't it? That's the big question we have here for Twin Peaks season 3. So RDV, who's with us on our action shows, he's not interested in this, but I've mentioned to him before about how this is done very well. I know that you and I work on this primarily. I'd like to thank, obviously you for coming up and being part of this as the young millennial 20 something. I really appreciate that. For all the people that listen to RDV and when we do our Tuesday night movies, actions based primarily, but not only. It's just one of those things where when you get into this, it seems to be Twin Peaks right now is one of our more successful shows that we have here on Xtreme Movie Show. So I'd like to thank everybody for participating, everybody getting involved, but getting the occasional email or tweet. I love that. Looking forward to finishing up this year. It's really, I will say this, no matter what I say about this episode, Pixel, is that the fear is gone about whether I think this is going to be a bad season. It's very good, and the relief from season 2 is over. I'm really, really dialed in, and man, I feel like it's going to be a strong finish, and I hope that that's true. Thank everybody for listening. Check us out on Facebook on the Xtreme Movie Show. We have a page that we just started on there. Let us know if there's any films or TV shows you'd like us to put under consideration. Yeah, it's just been great. Been having a lot of fun with it. Have a good night, everybody. As always, stay extreme.